Welcome back. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and Director of the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, William Burns, reviewed the ongoing situation in the Gaza Strip and underway efforts to achieve a ceasefire, protect civilians, and activate a two-state solution in a way that maintains security and stability in the region. We have more in the following report.
President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi received Director of U.S. Central Intelligence Agency CIA William Burns on Tuesday. Presidential spokesman Ahmed Fahmy said the meeting witnessed a confirmation of the deep and strong relations that bind the two countries as well as the Egyptian-American strategic partnership. Burns conveyed President Biden's greetings to President al-Sisi and his appreciation for Egypt's tireless efforts in advancing the path of calm in the Gaza Strip, the ceasefire, and the exchange of detainees. He highlighted Egypt's pivotal role in providing an entering of humanitarian aid to Gaza since the outbreak of the crisis. The meeting reviewed developments of the current situation in the Gaza Strip and confirmed that intensive consultations and coordination would continue to achieve a ceasefire agreement, protect civilians, and activate a two-state solution in a way that maintains security and stability in the region. Burns was in Cairo for a new round of talks on a Qatari-brokered ceasefire proposal that would temporarily halt fighting in exchange for Hamas freeing hostages. His visit comes after Washington and the United Nations warned Israel against carrying out a ground offensive into Palestinian Rafah without a plan to protect civilians who have nowhere left to go.
On Tuesday, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi received Qatari Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman Al Thani in the attendance of the head of the Egyptian Intelligence Service, Abbas Kamel, and the head of Qatari Security Authority, Abdullah bin Mohammed Al Khalifi. The meeting tackled joint efforts which are aimed at reaching ceasefire in the Gaza Strip and protecting civilians from the deteriorating situations in the besieged territory, in addition to transferring humanitarian and medical aid to Gaza. The two sides warned from the escalating operations in Rafah in the south of the Gaza Strip, as well as the negative consequences which could result from such violence amid a looming humanitarian crisis. They called on intensifying international efforts in order to evade broadening the cycle of violence and tension in the Middle East region. Well, to shed more light, we have the pleasure to have with us over the phone Dr. Raouf Ghaffar, political analyst. Good evening to you, sir. Hello? Hello, Dr. Raouf Ghaffar? Hello? Dr. Raouf Ghaffar, the political analyst?
Yes.
Hello, good evening to you, sir.
Good evening to you, my dear.
Dr. Ghaffar, now Egypt is exerting all efforts it can, and actually President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi have held talks with the director of the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency, William Burns, during which they reviewed the situation in the Gaza Strip and the deteriorating situation, of course. How did you follow this conversation between both leaders?
I mean, Egypt is not sparing any effort regarding the finding a reasonable, acceptable solution for what is happening to our dear brothers in Gaza. We have not failed to contact practically everybody on our planet. We have a just case. Our Palestinian brothers and sisters, they have a just case, and it's only fair that they get a treatment, a real fair treatment they deserve. And as we were saying, we are talking to everybody. Our president is calling and meeting all the heads of state to talk about this. Our Minister of Foreign Affairs is roaming around the globe to meet with his counterparts again to not to explain, because the situation is very clear, but
Yes.
just to try and get a consensus that what is happening has to stop one way or the other. And this is what we have been doing, and this was the core of the conversation that took place today between our president and the chief of the CIA.
Yes, so the conversation comes, or the discussions comes in light of the mediation between Egypt, Qatar, USA and Israel also. The situation started from also deteriorated more as last Thursday the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu threatened to invade or make an incursion in the Rafah city, the Palestinian Rafah city. So now more than 1 million and a half from the Palestinians are sheltering there in tents. So how did you follow this deteriorating situation?
I mean, atrocities and really against all human laws and human rights and international laws. I mean, Mr. Netanyahu seems not to care about anybody in the world except himself. And that is why he's doing what he's doing. I mean, escalation after escalation. And now the situation is becoming really, really, really serious. I mean, what first about the entering of aid, humanitarian aid, now he's squeezing the Gaza people towards the Rafah frontiers. And I don't know what he wants to achieve. I mean, displacement of half the population of Sinai, and he doesn't seem to stop.
Yes.
I don't know what he has in mind, but I mean, the whole world is against the displacement, is against moving the people of Gaza to somewhere else,
Yes.
wherever this somewhere is. But anyway, against, as I said, against all humanitarian ethics and laws. So we simply hope that and pray that the Israeli Prime Minister comes back to his senses and
Yes.
starts to understand that what he's doing is harmful not to the whole world. I mean,
Yes.
he is losing grounds everywhere, and he doesn't seem to understand this, and he continues his acts. And again, I say, we hope that he comes to his senses and stops what is happening. I mean, we now you said mediation, Qatar, Egypt, the United States are mediating. They were talking about the exchange of
Hostages. Yes.
Hostages, exactly. And one day they agree, the second they don't. And I mean, I don't know. I mean, the situation is deplorable, very, very sad, and doesn't seem to get to an end soon. So we only pray that it ends justly for the Palestinians, and we sincerely appraise the efforts done by Egypt, in particular to achieve some just settlement in the area.
Yes, I thank you very much for your time. Thank you for your valuable information, Dr. Raouf Ghaffar, the political analyst. Thank you very much for joining us over the phone. Ladies and gentlemen, a short break and I want to be back with you. Well, Foreign Ministry spokesman Ahmed Abu Zaid said Egypt was holding security and political contacts to avert wide-scale Israeli operations in Palestinian city of Rafah. Abu Zaid stressed that Egypt rejects any measures to displace the Palestinian people and expressed its readiness to deal with any scenario regarding this crisis. The spokesman called on the United States and the European Union to put an end to the Israeli aggression on Gaza and seize the planned Israeli operation in Palestinian southern city of Rafah to prevent a humanitarian catastrophe. While Egypt on Monday deemed as absolutely unacceptable the Israeli finance minister's remarks on the ongoing negotiations for brokering a deal on hostages and captives release. The Foreign Ministry spokesman Ahmed Abu Zaid accused Israeli Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich of attempting to sabotage the talks as the Israeli side was weighing sending a team to Cairo for the latest round of talks. The spokesman also said that it is unfortunate and disgraceful that Smotrich continues to make irresponsible and inflammatory statements that only reveals a hunger for killing, destruction and sabotages any attempt to contain the crisis in the Gaza Strip. He also added that Egypt fully controls its lands and it is not to blame for the shortcomings of other parties. The health ministry in Gaza said on Tuesday at least 28,473 people had been killed in the territory during more than 4 months of Israeli war. According to the ministry, the latest toll included 133 deaths over the past 24 hours, with 68,146 people being injured since October the 7th. This comes as Israel faces growing international pressure to agree to a ceasefire as it prepares for an invasion of the southern Gaza city of Rafah, where more than 1 million Palestinians are trapped. UN's Human Rights Chief Volker Turk warned that a high number of civilians would likely be killed or injured in a full Israeli invasion into Rafah, which could also spell the end of the humanitarian aid entering Gaza. With the Israeli war in Gaza entering its 5th month, Arab League Secretary General Ahmed Abu Ghait said attempts by Israel to force a displacement of Palestinians in order to create more space for Israeli settlers mean that confrontations would continue for 1,000 years to come. Abu Ghait warned against the expansion of the conflict if the war on Gaza continues, saying that Israeli actions threatens deals signed with Egypt and Jordan. The Arab League chief also was speaking at the second day of the World Government Summit in Dubai. Well, the head of the State Information Service, Dia Rashwan, said that Egypt was playing a vital role in the Palestinian cause and has the means to defend itself. Rashwan asserted that Egypt would not stop at symbolic measures regarding its national security and its lands or dissolving the Palestinian cause. He expressed his astonishment on remarks of some far-right Israeli cabinet members over Egypt, pointing that those remarks come in an attempt by Israel to justify its occupation of Salah ad-Din or Philadelphia Axis. U.S. President Joe Biden said on Monday that the United States is pushing for a 6-week pause in the fighting between Israel and Hamas in Gaza as a stepping stone towards a longer ceasefire. Biden and Jordan's King Abdullah spoke after the two longtime allies held talks in the White House residence. Their discussions covered a list of challenges, including a looming Israeli ground offensive in southern Gaza and the threat of a humanitarian calamity among Palestinian civilians. Biden, who has shown increasing with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for not heeding his advice, said the United States was working with allies in the region on a deal to pause the fighting to allow Gaza hostages to be freed and the flow of humanitarian assistance to increase. For his part, King Abdullah II called for an immediate ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, saying that an Israeli ground attack on the grounded southern Gaza city of Rafah would be certain to produce another humanitarian catastrophe. Well, welcome back. Well, to shed more light on this, we have the pleasure to have with us over the phone His Excellency Ambassador Midhat Al-Maliki, former Assistant Foreign Minister. Good evening.
Good evening to you.
Your Excellency, Ambassador Maliki, how did you follow the statements by U.S. President Joe Biden? He started to change his status and started criticizing the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
Well, over the last few weeks, we've seen a divergence that is growing between the position of the United States and one of, I'm not even going to say about Israel, but the Prime Minister of Israel. And it's becoming a personal issue between the two leaders.
Yes.
However, as I said before, I only believe the doing of the United States more than the words. We've been listening to a lot of controversial messages and sometimes even opposite messages from various officials from the American administration, starting from President Biden himself to State Secretary Blinken, and then William Burns, as we heard it, and other officials as well.
Yes.
I mean, we've heard a lot about the two-state solution coming from our American friends. However, when it comes to reality, there is nothing that really implements this. On the contrary, I mean, we've been hearing about a lot of aid, especially military aid, going into Israel, and there is a support that is, so far, I see it unconditional. The fleet of the United States is in the Mediterranean to support Israel and to make sure that Iran, the traditional enemy of Israel, will not provoke any situation, unwanted situation, and deterring the Iranian would be with the presence of the American fleet, as we've seen.
Yes.
However,
yes.
what I want to say that although these diversions, but we didn't hear about anything regarding that there could be a stop of arms or ammunitions or anything of the sort.
Yes.
On the contrary, what we've heard is that from various sources, from the American administration, and they didn't hide it, they consider any Palestinian resistance movement, Hamas or else, as a terrorist organization, and it should be teared down and it should be dismantled. And what I think is going to happen is that we are going to see what we can call precision attacks, although it's very hard to do precision attacks in such a small area of 50 or 60 square kilometers, which is Rafah area, where there is over 1.5 million Palestinians in this area. All of them who had to flee their homes in order to seek security. And this is the last refuge they have, which is Rafah.
Yes.
Israel did not hide its position that it wants to bombard Rafah. And make no mistake, the United States is not opposing to that. It is opposing of the high number of casualties and deaths, which means that if Israel wants to attack Rafah by land or by air force or strikes or anything, it's okay as long as the number of casualties is not as high as it should be. And this is the main issue that we are facing. The idea is that Egypt, our position is not to destruct the last and final refuge of the Palestinians, because this would end up in a massacre, no matter how Israel is trying to avoid civilians, because they cannot be avoided in such a tiny area of land.
Yes.
But we will see what the negotiations that took place today between William Burns and his counterparts here in Egypt. President Sisi himself met him, and I think maybe he has a certain plan. I hope it is not what I just mentioned, which is that our borders are going to be intact. There won't be any invasion of the Egyptian borders. However, maybe they would want us to accept precision attacks on certain targets in order to dismantle Hamas, because this is the only thing that Israel wants to do in order to declare victory over Hamas and to say that it managed to dismantle this terrorist organization.
Yes. Also, Your Excellency, U.S. media outlets have reported that President Joe Biden has named Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu as the primary obstacle in the hostage release talks. So in your opinion, are these remarks aiming just to calm the public opinion only, or is it they are really a real expression of Biden's frustration of Netanyahu's stances?
Well, actually, as I said at the beginning, there is a divergence that is growing up between the two countries and mainly between the two leaders. However, this did not mean in any way or form that American support for Israel is any less than before. And this is the most important thing. The Americans are not against destroying Hamas, but in order to do so, they want to see Israel respecting the international law and the international humanitarian law, which is impossible actually to achieve in such a tiny area where 1.5 million are cornered. And those Palestinians actually were living in other areas, and they had to be forcibly displaced from their original areas in the northern and central Gaza towards south, where there is the last area before the Egyptian borders. We've heard a lot of rumors about other plans. I mean, there was a plan that Israel wants to concentrate all of them near the seashore in order to displace them again by the sea to other countries that have expressed their willingness to take some of the Palestinian refugees. And after all, we have to understand that these are humans, and they have been subject to suffering for such a long time. And maybe this will encourage them voluntarily to leave and flee the country if they find a safe place for them and their children. There is a lot of scenarios in front of us. The most important thing is how seriously the United States is willing to pressure Israel to stop from bombarding Rafah and to leave it in this way. But Israel, unfortunately, nothing is stopping Israel from continuing the carpet bombing that is doing all over Israel. Let's not forget that we have around a little over a week before Israel had to submit its first report to the International Court of Justice. And so far what we've seen is the continuous genocide that is taking place, and I wonder what are the efforts that the Israeli has done according to the request of the ICG in order to not to incite to genocide and not to help to commit this crime. So far, we have seen nothing but the opposite, and we hope that the International Court of Justice will take stronger measures against Israel, that ever since the sixth request from the ICJ have gone out, Until today, we haven't seen any reaction, any serious reaction from Israel to abide by those 6 requests. So
Yes.
I wonder what they are going to submit to the South African as requested by the court.
Yes, I thank you very much for your time. Thank you for your valuable information, Your Excellency, Ambassador Midhat El-Maligi, former Assistant Foreign Minister. Thank you very much for joining us over the phone. Ladies and gentlemen, a short break and I'm going to be back with you. Well, European Union Foreign Policy Chief Joseph Borrell told media on Monday that the international community may have to think about providing arms to Israel. Borrell said it was contradictory for countries to repeatedly declare that Israel was killing too many civilians in Gaza but do nothing concrete to prevent the killings. Well, the more details in the following report.
European Union Foreign Policy Chief Joseph Borrell on Monday made a thinly veiled call on the U.S. to cut arms supplies to Israel due to high civilian casualties in its aggression in Gaza. He recalled that U.S. President Joe Biden said last week that Israel's response to the October 7th attack had been over the top, and U.S. and other Western officials had repeatedly said too many civilians were being killed in Gaza. The U.S. is Israel's most important foreign arms provider. Israel $3.8 billion in military aid annually, ranging from fighter jets to powerful bombs. Washington has so far not heeded any pleas to cut such aid. Asked at a news briefing about Borrell's comments and whether the U.S. is considering to cut military aid to Israel, State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller defended U.S. policy, saying it gave the administration the maximum ability to be successful in influencing Israel. Borrell also noted Dutch court on Monday ordered the government of the Netherlands to block all exports of F-35 fighter jets parts to Israel over concerns they were being used in violations of international law in the Gaza war. Borrell said it was contradictory for countries to repeatedly declare that Israel was killing too many civilians in Gaza but do nothing concrete to prevent these killings. In his remarks in Brussels, he also sharply criticized the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, saying he was not listening to pleas to do more to protect civilians. He said Netanyahu had been calling for an evacuation of Palestinian civilians from the Rafah area of Gaza, the last part of the enclave where people have found refuge. But the veteran Spanish politician questioned how this could be done.
Well, UNRWA Chief Philippe Lazzarini said after meeting member states at the United Nations in Geneva on Tuesday that calls for it to be dismantled were short-sighted and that terminating the mandate of the agency that provides essential services to Palestinian refugees would deepen the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Israel has claimed that UNRWA, which has helped Palestinians for over 70 years, is not fit for purpose, and major donors have suspended funding after allegations that 12 of UNRWA's thousands of Palestinian employees were suspected of involvement in the October 7th attacks. Even prior to the Israeli allegations, Israel had repeatedly called for UNRWA to be dismantled, arguing that it fosters anti-Israeli sentiment among its staff. UNRWA, which a spokesperson for the agency said had about 2 more weeks of funding before some programs might be disrupted, strongly disputes this. Now with the economy news, as the Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli attended on Tuesday the signing ceremony of a cooperation deal between the Information Technology Industry Development Authority ITIDA and the Emirati Mashriq Global Network to expand the company's business services in Egypt. This ceremony was held on the sidelines of the Premier's participation in the 2024 World Government Summit in Dubai, which was held in Dubai under the theme of shaping future governments. The three-year agreement will provide 300 job opportunities for qualified Egyptian cadres in the field of exporting banking services. Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli delivered the keynote speech at the 2024 World Government Summit in Dubai on Monday. Addressing the summit, the Prime Minister reviewed the government's efforts to lead a rise up in different economic and development sectors and boosting the efficiency of the infrastructure. Madbouli affirmed that the government is working intensely to improve the business environment in Egypt. The Premier's participation in the summit, which runs into February 14th, comes upon an invitation from United Arab Emirates Vice President and Prime Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum. Egypt's stock market indices have edged higher at close on Tuesday, boosted by purchasing operations by Arab and foreign investment funds and corporations, while local corporations, Arab and local investors went into selling operations. Capital market for companies listed in the bourse gained about 12 billion pounds. The benchmark EGX 30 index added 0.39% to end the dealings at 28,604.54 points. The equal-weighted index EGX 70 also went up by 1.82%, reaching 6,997.53 points, and the more expanded EGX 100 index also edged higher by 1.95% to reach 9,825.72 points. Europe's main stock markets diverged at the start of trading Tuesday, with London nudging higher following mixed UK unemployment data and Eurozone indices falling. London's benchmark FTSE 100 index rose 0.1%, with traders looking ahead to US inflation data due later in the day. In the Eurozone, the Paris CAC 40 index dipped with 0.1% and the Frankfurt's DAX dropped 0.3%. To advance, climbing to 38,010 on Tuesday, not far from the record high of 38,957. The benchmark touched on the December 29th, 1989. The Nikkei has gained more than 13% so far this year, after rising 28% in 2023. The International Monetary Fund and the World Bank warned on Monday that the Gaza war and the related attacks on shipping through the Red Sea pose threats to global economy. Details on the following report.
The IMF and World Bank warned on Monday that the Gaza war and related attacks on shipping through the Red Sea pose threats to the global economy. International Monetary Fund's Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva said the Israeli aggression, raging since October, has already hit the Middle East and North Africa region's economy. She told the World Government Summit and an annual gathering of business and political leaders in Dubai that its knock-on effects could impact the world the longer the fighting drags on. She added, right now there's a risk of spillover in the region, as Yemen's Iran-backed Houthi rebels have attacked Red Sea shipping, leading to the crucial maritime passage. The UN Conference on Trade and Development warned late last month that the volume of commercial traffic passing through the Suez Canal had fallen more than 40% in the previous 2 months. Georgieva said that if there are other consequences in terms of where the fighting goes, it could be more problematic for the world as a whole. Gaza Strip has been under intense Israeli aggression for over 4 months. Despite the war-related uncertainties, Georgieva said the IMF was very confident that the world economy is now poised for this soft landing people have been dreaming of. Also speaking at the summit, the World Bank president, Ajay Banga, said that what was going on in Gaza, but also challenges of Ukraine and the Red Sea, were amongst the top challenges to the global economic outlook.
Now with the sports news, as Ivory Coast stunning Africa Cup of Nations triumph was a fitting end to the most thrilling edition of the tournament in recent memory, but the manner of their victory makes it impossible to imagine what the long-term impact could be. The Elephants really should have been eliminated from their own competition in the group stage after losing 4-0 to Equatorial Guinea on the 22nd of January, their heaviest ever home defeat. That would have made them just the second host country in 30 years to go out of the AFCON in the group stage, but instead they squeezed through as the last of the 4 best third-placed teams. Their group stage showing led to the departure of veteran French coach Jean-Louis Gasset, who had been in charge since May 2022. Qatar successfully defended their Asian Cup crown after beating Jordan 3-1 on Saturday at a stadium where Akram Afif converted 3 penalties as the hosts won their second continental title. Jordan were playing in their first Asian Cup final and seeking the first major trophy, but it was Qatar who prevailed in front of 86,492 fans, including Qatar's ruler Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani and FIFA President Gianni Infantino. Yazan Al-Naimat had briefly given Jordan hope when he netted an equalizer in the second half, but their dreams were shattered when they conceded 2 more penalties, however, away by Afif, who finished as the tournament's top scorer with 8 goals. Well, with this, we come to the end of our program. I hope you've enjoyed being with me. Please wait for us next Tuesday. My name is Amal Mukhtar. Thank you for watching.